Welcome to my horticultural therapy webinar. My name is Joseph Fuhrmeister, LMHC licensed mental health counselor at Gainesville Community Counseling Center. So today I wanted to just share with everyone a little bit about horticultural therapy and the benefits that it can have on mental health. And then also just kind of share a little bit of the history about horticultural therapy, some of the methods, and a little bit of research that supports the practice. And at the end, I will be doing just a little fun activity. I have a plant that's grown out of control, and I'll be chopping it up and potting it just as kind of an idea for an activity that can be done. So, for those of you who are just members of the community, this might be a good idea for you to get started with a planty hobby, or for providers, mental health, or otherwise, just some ideas that maybe you could either do with your clients or just to be able to kind of suggest to clients, because we all know we're trying to find hobbies and coping skills, and sometimes it's just hard to know, like, where do I start? So I'll be demonstrating a little bit of a activity at the end with one of my plants. And first, I wanted to just kind of start off with a fun word that I learned as I was putting this presentation together. The word is biophilia. So, the definition of biophilia is that it's an innate and genetically determined love for the natural world felt universally by humankind. So again, my intentions for this workshop are to help you all kind of learn about how plants and just nature in general, like natural environments, can improve our well-being. I'll do that planty activity at the end, and maybe you can add it to your weekly routine. You can get some tips for how to be working with plants or just outside in nature in a purposeful way. And then you'll watch me kind of in my element at the end with that activity. So first, I kind of this is what sparked my interest to do a webinar about this topic. Me personally, we all, went through the pandemic, and we're still kind of experiencing some of the residuals of that. But we went through lockdown, and with lockdown came high levels of feeling isolated, and we couldn't really go many places, if at all. Um, some of us may have also experienced losses in our lives, whether that be, um, family members or jobs, whatever that may mean to you. And with all of this, I think it was clear that a lot of our mental health was impacted by this kind of collective trauma that we all experienced. So during the lockdown period, when we were all kind of at home and not really able to do some of these normal things that we were used to doing, a lot of us tried to kind of pick up hobbies. Um, so with that, it was kind of hard to figure out, well, what can I be doing that's not like a social hobby or activity? So if you were like me, I went outside and tried to go on walks and just kind of be in spaces where, one, they weren't closed spaces, which was recommended that we kind of stay, keep that social distance. And it was considered pretty safe to be in outdoor spaces, um, depending on how you look at it. So a lot of us were getting outside. We also kind of wanted to have something to take care of. We had a lot of time on our hands, right? So we, kind of would have to find something that we could tend to and use that and spend our time on, as well as something to look forward to. I kind of looked into some of the trends specifically related to plant and gardening hobbies, and there are a lot of people who are saying they picked up this hobby of houseplants or gardening. And in fact, there has been some research done on just kind of overall sales during the period of 2020, when the pandemic kind of really kicked into gear and beyond. A lot of businesses that specifically specialized in like gardening supplies, house plants. There was a lot of online ordering. They showed 64% of businesses showed overall higher sales compared to just the previous year in 2019. So a lot of people are out there spending their money on this type of hobby. And then 46% of businesses did report that the pandemic positively impacted their business. And again, these are businesses specifically related to plant sales, garden supplies, all of those kinds of things. So here's a short video about horticultural therapy, and I want to make sure that the sound can work. Let me just double check. Can you all just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it?
I'm Jan Lane. I'm a registered horticultural therapist, and I work with the recreation therapy team here at Inova Mount Vernon Hospital. We provide a year-round horticultural therapy program. Horticultural therapy involves the use of gardening activities and the innate connection that people have with plants to help them improve their physical, mental, and emotional health. Oftentimes when people are in the garden, they're unaware that the same motions that they're using for plant care, for deadheading, pinching back, digging, all of those are the same motions that they've been working on with physical and occupational therapists inside the hospital. The sights and scents and smells of the garden provide a distraction for patients. What they're doing is bringing their focus back to the here and now so they can continue on with the rest of the day.
Okay, so as you heard in the video, horticultural therapy is not only used for mental and emotional health, but also physical health. And we'll kind of talk just briefly about that here in a second. Okay, so let's talk about what is horticultural therapy. So it's defined by the American Horticultural Therapy Association as the engagement of a person in gardening related activities facilitated by a trained therapist to achieve a specific treatment goal. Now, I will say I'm not a trained horticultural therapist, but I think as some of you may know, with different types of therapy modalities, we don't necessarily have to do the full uh, protocoled types of therapy that we sometimes just borrow some of the skills from. So, although I'm not a horticultural therapist, I do urge my clients to think of a nature-based activity, or specifically gardening, taking care of houseplants, to help with their mental well-being. Horticultural therapy activities can be either passive or active. And that means, either you are actively like repotting, digging, like pruning, or really you're just kind of watching your plants grow or observing the environment, like going out into a garden and walking around and looking at maybe the bees and the butterflies, smelling the flowers. And then these activities are in order to achieve specific health related outcomes. Certain activities could be planting plants, propagating, which For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically just taking one plant and making more of it from the same plant. So we'll be doing that in the activity at the end. But you cut off a piece of the plant, let it kind of grow some roots, and then it will grow a whole new plant. You could be planting seeds, collecting fruit or vegetables, like I mentioned before, observing and navigating green spaces. You could do flower arrangements, potting up plants, and much more. Okay, so a little bit of the history of this topic. When did people start to really basically play with plants and use them for a fun activity or for visual appeal? Well, there's evidence that agricultural landscapes date back to at least 2000 BC, Mesopotamia. So that's over 4,000 years ago. In the late 18th and 19th centuries, patients in asylums, which, if we can all remember, asylums were kind of like these big hospital settings where people experiencing mental health conditions were kind of like sent to live, which those really aren't around anymore. We kind of did away with that. But basically, the patients who were living in those asylums were taken out into the gardens. And I think the staff and physicians who were working there understood that there was something about the patients being outside, being in nature, and viewing the natural landscapes kind of helped to calm them a little bit if that's what they needed. In World War I and World War II, soldiers were benefiting from horticultural therapy, and they specifically were using this as a type of therapy for soldiers who experienced either like physical ailments from injuries, like war-related injuries. At that time, I think people considered post-traumatic stress disorder to be shell shock, and they were encouraging these soldiers to go into these horticultural therapy programs because, again, they saw the benefits of that. Formal training in horticultural therapy started in the US in the 1970s, and this was for physical therapy. And then in the 1980s is when there were systematic and empirical studies done on the benefits of horticultural therapy for mental health. And I just liked this picture here. I think it's of Egypt, but as we can imagine, it was a lovely time in the garden. Okay, so what are some of the benefits of horticultural therapy? Studies have shown that cognitive functioning and memory is improved, which has benefits for patients experiencing cognitive impairment or dementia. It can also help reduce anxiety, depression, and stress. And one of the ideas behind that is because there's increased joy from these types of activities, and it can also be considered an adaptive behavior. What might be a maladaptive behavior would be something where we are trying to help the way that we feel, but sometimes the things that we know how to do aren't really helping us in the long run. That can look like substance use, binge eating, other types of behaviors that in the moment help us feel better, but kind of end up hurting us in the long run. So this is an adaptive behavior that does not have negative effects. And also, there's been research on how horticultural therapy can help individuals diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. The idea is that it helps with better concentration and sustained mental ability. We talked about before the soldiers who were experiencing shell shock, later reclassified as or identified as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Something that came to mind for me is this idea of post-traumatic growth. kind of pun intended. But post traumatic growth is basically where uh, someone experiences a trauma and they are able to actually grow from that experience in a positive way. They've learned something about themselves. They've figured out that actually I can overcome my adversities. And by having a nature based hobby or being taking care of these plants, they find that they're able to nurture not only the plants but themselves. And then there have been studies showing improvements in self esteem and just overall mood. So, this was a really interesting study out of Taiwan that I came across just to kind of illustrate how some of these studies are done. Um, and I'll show you kind of a picture that helps with understanding this because it's kind of a lot of parts that are to this study. This was in the workplace and they took employees and put them in these different settings for, I think they're like their workspace um, or their desk, and they had a few different groups. The first group was they had a window with a view of just this a city. The second group, they did have a window as well. They had a view of the city, and then they also had indoor plants that were around them. The third group, they had a window and it was just viewing nature, no city. Fourth group, they had a window and they were able to view nature without a city. And then they also had indoor plants. Um, Fifth group, they had just an office without any window view or any indoor plants. And then the sixth group was an office without a window view, but just indoor plants. So you can see that the researchers in this study really wanted to look at all of the different variables to see like what specifically could be influencing the data that they collected. They used electromyography, which basically just measures someone's muscle response. So I would imagine like if somebody is tense, that would be picked up on the electromyography as opposed to if someone feels more relaxed. They use the electroencephalography, the EEG, which looked at their brain activity. They measured their blood volume pulse, which kind of helped them see like what was their heart rate. So, we know that possibly with anxiety, our heart rate can kind of be elevated. And then there was a subjective measure for just anxiety. So what they found was that the participants were less nervous or anxious based on all of these different measures when they had a view of nature and or indoor plants. And there weren't any statistical differences between whether it was just the view of nature or view of nature with plants and whatever combination you want to think of. But the point is, if they had views of nature and or plants, they were less nervous or anxious. And then here, I think it's kind of hard to see, but this is just like a screen grab or a screenshot from the study that we were just talking about. So it kind of showed the different environments here of each of their desks. Okay. So what is some theory behind, this phenomenon? Why do we benefit from working with plants and nature? So one idea is that their nature has more subtle but multisensory qualities that helps us stimulate our memory and helps to reduce the demand on our cognitive resources. So if we're having to attend to a lot of different possibly like stressors, for example, if we're walking down the street, there's cars going by, there's people, there's we're having to watch where we walk. Maybe we're living in a city and there's lots of noise. So nature seems to be a lot more subtle on our senses and helps to just kind of ease a little bit of the load to process everything that's going on. Another thought is that just generally fresh air is good for us, and sunshine. But we know that fresh air and sunshine actually does regulate our circadian rhythm. So this is kind of the cycle that we're in every day for sleep and appetite. So basically, it's like what tells us that it's time to go to sleep and what tells us that it's time to wake up, what tells us that we're hungry. And once this is in a rhythm, then this just impacts so many aspects of our well-being. For those of you who have ever lost sleep one night, we know that it can take maybe even multiple days to recover from just the few hours of sleep that we lost. And that affects our mood, right? We feel more lethargic, maybe more irritable, maybe even more emotional. The tears might come a little easier when you've lost sleep. And if this is chronic, your circadian rhythm is getting thrown off. And this just throws a lot off balance mentally, emotionally, and physically. Here's this concept of biophilia again. The idea is that natural forms, such as plants, leaves, rocks, anything that's from nature, that they have inherent qualities that somehow have a healing effect on us. Now, this is really hard to study because what are those inherent qualities? We think that, well, we, as in the researchers, they think that natural environments have some sort of evolutionary benefit for our survival. So why would it be that natural environments help us regulate our physical health and our emotional health? Well, we need to understand that we're in an environment that can support our survival, can support our ability to find food. If it's too cold out, that we have to be able to respond to that. So we're able to pick up on different qualities from our natural environment that tell us something about where we are in space and time. Okay. So this is one idea about how we're perceiving natural environments and how that's helpful for us. Also, we tend to self-identify with plant growth. Again, that post-traumatic growth. We kind of we'll kind of project ourselves onto our garden. For me personally, I like to think of my plants as and how well I'm able to take care of them, and um, the things that I kind of do for them as a direct relationship between how well I'm doing, right? If my plants are starting to suffer, if I'm like kind of not watering them or not taking care of any pest issues, I kind of ask myself, well, what's been going on with me? Like, why haven't I been able to kind of take care of my plants as well? And it's a little bit of a reflection of maybe I've just been really too busy and kind of burning myself out. And I may need to kind of make some adjustments. That's just me personally. Um, Also, behavioral activation. This is a concept that comes from a type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, where basically we try to look at like what are some behaviors that we can be doing that positively affect our mindset and our emotional well-being. And in that type of therapy, one of the strategies is to get people doing things. If you think of someone who maybe has depression, um, they may be more inclined to want to sleep a lot or um, tends to not get a lot of their responsibilities taken care of, and this leads to a lot of I guess kind of passivity with our environment. And unfortunately, although someone who may be experiencing depression feels like what they need to do is sleep, or what they need to do is just take a break from everything because their brain is telling them to do that, um, it contributes to the depression itself. It's almost like the brain starts to kind of um, fall deeper and deeper into that um, lack of connection to the world around. So, again, one of the strategies would be something called behavioral activation, where we're trying to get the person to do something, just do something like if it's just brushing your teeth, if it's just going on a walk, whatever it is. It might feel difficult. It might feel like, the smallest things take way more energy than needed. um, we want to try to just do it anyways. And what it does is it actually reverses that depression, that falling, that depression cycle, and tells your brain, oh, actually, I need to kind of like kick in that um, the energy levels because there are things that I'm having to do. So gardening and plant related activities can be a form of behavioral activation. It also helps us to feel that sense of control. Maybe there's certain aspects of our life where we feel out of control, and that's normal. We don't have control over everything. We do want to find the things that we have some control over, and I have control over whether or not I, you know, plant my flowers in a certain pattern, or um, if I rearrange my plant shelf. We also feel empowered. And sometimes these gardening and plant related activities involve being like doing things in a group. So we may be working in a community garden. So that can lead to just feelings of cooperation, um, with others, socializing, and just a sense of community. Also, in my personal experience, I'll just kind of share what these types of activities do for me. So it's relaxing. Plants don't talk back. So sometimes we just need a little bit of a break from some of the chaos with, family, or, you know, at work or what have you. And so it's just relaxing to be with your plants. It's kind of meditative for me. It's methodical. Um, I get to just kind of be quiet and be in my thoughts and observe how I'm feeling. Um, for me, it does come with a sense of responsibility, um, for something that's living, right? I unfortunately our landlord doesn't allow us to have pets, so I have a ton of plants, and I get to take care of um, a living thing anyways. And they are living; they respond to things, and they'll tell you when they need something if you just pay attention close enough. Plants will. And what else did I say? Oh, community. I'm on an online Gainesville group on Facebook that just kind of like talks about plants. And um, some people, they'll trade plants or sell them, and it's just nice to kind of have that community with that common interest. And then I'm always just I love learning about things, and the plant world is an endless, fountain of information. And you can just learn so much from this type of hobby. And um, I just like watching things grow. So change and development are, as a therapist, one of my interests. Okay, so with going into a hobby like this, you may want to get clear as to like, what is it that you're hoping to get out of this? What do you hope to get out of a plant related activity, or even horticultural therapy proper, if that's something that you're going in, if you're seeking that from a trained horticultural therapist. So just kind of ask, like, what is it that you want to get out of this? You also want to ask yourself, what difficulties have you been experiencing? So, have you been experiencing a lot of anxiety, or just feeling kind of lost without purpose? Um, what is it that you think can be improved or helped by this? Um, and then I would also kind of ask, you would want to ask yourself, have you had any experiences in the past with gardening or plant related activities? For me personally, my grandma, she was an avid gardener, and she would kind of walk me around and show me all the stuff in her garden. She would give me little plants to take home, and I really found a sense of connection with her through that. And that was a positive experience for me. So if you can look back at some other experiences in the past, was it was it something that you enjoyed? Some people, they have negative experiences with plants, right? So how many of you have got a new plant and then in a matter of weeks it passed away? I'm gonna guess pretty much everyone, me included. Okay, many times. So yeah, I see a few hands. Okay. So, all right, we are now at the portion of the presentation where I'm going to do a little activity, as I mentioned. So I'm just going to stop sharing the presentation. And what I'm going to do is just put my computer back a little bit so that you can all see me. Okay, so for those of you who wanted to just stick around for the presentation, you can feel free to head out. But if you want to stick around and watch me propagate a houseplant and pot that up, then feel free to do that. But that's kind of the end of the info part of the presentation. So set this back here. All right. So here is the plant. And I see someone has a question. Let me just get that. You can just unmute yourself. What's your question, Monique?
Oh, sorry. I had it up when you were asking about who had a plant that didn't do well after a few days. I'll remove it.
Okay. Yeah, like I think this is an experience that most people have had at some point or another. And I will say, they tell you that cactuses and succulents are the easiest plants to take care of, but no, they're not. You
No,
can
not at all.
absolutely kill them. Yeah, you can you can kill them. So, right. So this is my unruly plant. This is called an arrowhead vine. The specific name, with plants, they've got the common names and then they have the official name. So this is called a syngonium, and it just kind of vines. Let me pull out a vine here. It vines and it actually can climb up onto things. So if you have a pole to put it on, it will climb up that pole. But what I want to do during this activity is just kind of notice the sensations from all five of my senses. Well, I'm going to remove the taste sense because I'm not going to be tasting this plant. But we've got our sense of touch, sight, sound, and smell, removing the sense of taste. And of course, we know that with gardening activities, there can be a sense of taste if you've got vegetables or herbs. So what I'm feeling right now is that this is actually kind of chilly because it was outside, but it's very soft and almost like a little bit waxy. And I do hear the leaves as I kind of rub them. Who's ever listened to ASMR videos? Does everyone know what that is? ASMR. Oh, Devin. Yeah. So I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically like it's people creating these sounds into a very sensitive microphone, and the sounds somehow help people feel relaxed and soothed. So, this is kind of like ASMR, and I just kind of hear these leaves. They're pretty green. They have, if you can see this leaf, they have kind of a shine to them. And the greens, it's kind of variegated, so the green kind of changes. You can actually see the veins of the leaf, and that to me says this is a living thing, right? It needs those veins to send all of the water and nutrients out into its extremities. Okay, so I did touch, sound, vision, and then smell. So this doesn't really smell, but I can smell the soil. And kind of going back to those innate qualities of nature, just something about soil kind of makes me feel relaxed. And you may have even experienced this when there hasn't been a rain in a long time, and then it rains and the soil gets wet for the first time in a long, and you can kind of smell that soil, and it smells it almost smells like fertile. And so kind of going back to what I was saying before with the evolutionary advantages, what might fertile soil tell us, or even just the fact that we can smell the soil because it rained? Anyone have any guesses? Tell us about our survival. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just kind of say what I think about it. If we can smell the soil after rain, that evolutionarily may say that, hey, the rains have come and the drought might be over, right? And we can continue to grow our crops. We can eat, we can survive. Devin, I see you turned on your camera. Did you have something to say?
No, I'm really interested to hear your response though.
Okay. Yeah, that was basically it. So just kind of some ideas as to like, why are we positively affected by something that's not directly contributing to, like, I know why I like food, right? Because like I get hungry and it keeps me alive. But why do we like nature? Why do we like sunsets? That's a question I've always asked myself. Like, what is it about that helps me feel positive? And I think it has to do with some very subconscious parts of us that are saying this is safe, this is good. That if we can, connect with that through a type of activity like this is what's directly contributing to our mental and emotional well-being. All right, let's get at it. So with this type of plant, as I mentioned, it vines. So I've got this really long vine here, and I just don't know what to do with it. I don't think it looks good, and I would prefer for the plant to be a little bit more compact. So I'm going to go ahead and just chop this off. Good thing is it will grow back from where I cut it. Okay, so no need to worry about that. And this is the cool thing. You can just keep making more of these plants because they keep growing back. What you want to do is find a section between the leaves, and you probably won't be able to see it very well here, but it'll show you here. A little bit lower on the vine, I'm just going to cut between these two leaves, like right there. All right. So I have my cutting. I'm just going to set this aside. Got it here. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make a plant for each leaf. These are called nodes. So at each node, I'm going to cut it. As far as I know, this doesn't hurt the plant. And let me show you here. This one, there's a little root already coming from that. Remember I said that these climb? That's how they climb. So they want to kind of sink these roots into tree bark and other parts of their natural environment so that they can get more nutrients from when it rains. What you'll want to do, there's two ways to make these into new plants. You can either put them directly into soil, and I forgot to grab my containers, but you can have like a glass container of water and just put them in the container of water in a brightly lit spot. It doesn't have to be direct sun. I would actually recommend for it to not be, because it will burn them. But you'll put them in water, and after a couple weeks, you'll see little roots starting to grow out of here, and then you can transfer them into potting soil. Now, this kind of plant is actually very easy to propagate, and it probably won't rot if I just put it directly into soil. So I'm going to just do that right now. And I have 1, 2, 3, cut off this extra stuff, 4, 5, 6. So when I'm doing this, I'm confident, right? I'm confident about what I'm doing because I've done this a lot of times. And we were talking, before about how this gives a sense of confidence and self-esteem. For me, I like knowing what I'm doing with my plants, and it's all been trial and error. I feel like I have a little bit of I would say, I don't know if the right word would be dominion over this topic, but I really feel like I've gotten into this and know what I'm doing, and I feel really good about that. So I'm going to pull out a pot. This is a pot from something else, but you can always reuse stuff with these types of hobbies. You can get a lot of free things from your neighbors or online, your local, big box stores, and they'll give you some of these for free because they don't know what to do with them once they're done. So that's kind of cool too. If you're somebody who's a little thrifty like me, you can also do the whole thrifty thing with this hobby. So I have a little thing of soil down here. I'm not going to show you that, but I created my own mix, and I'm just going to fill this up and just fill it partially up. Got a little bit of soil in there, and then you just want to just plop them in. It doesn't have to be pretty. And then what I'm going to do is just fill the rest of this up with soil. And this is going to take some time. So this, I think, also is a practice in patience. You'll probably see some new vines poking through the soil, and I would just guess maybe like 3 weeks. But for the sake of demonstration, I'm not going to make this perfect, but basically I just put more soil in there, and now you've got a new plant. So this is really rewarding for me, and I also like to give these away as gifts for friends. So it's kind of like a free gift, but also like I made it, I grew it, right? And so this is from me. So does anybody have any questions or any comments before we finish up? Because I'm seeing the time here.
Joe.
Yes. Hey, Emily.
Hi. 2 things. Number one, I wanted to say thank you in the beginning for bringing up the fact that there can also be a passive aspect to horticultural therapy. I think sometimes I forget that, and I know that some folks do have limited physical means, so I think that that was important for me to hear, like that there can actually probably a huge piece of this is can be passive. You don't have to be hoisting things and lifting and digging in 100-degree weather. You can also just be observing. So thank you for that. And then
That was a really great point. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I have a sense, but I love also hearing how other people do things differently from me. How often would one water this new plant that you've just repotted?
So the rule of thumb for almost all houseplants that are in a pot is when the first, like the top inch of soil is dry, go ahead and water it. We do not want to overwater our plants. And in fact, I would recommend that if anything, you underwater them. Your plant is going to tell you what it needs. So if you underwater the plant, it's going to get a little bit wilty. And the soil might even become hydrophobic, which means the soil hardens. And then every time you try to water it, it just kind of runs off the side and goes down into the little tray. And it's not actually getting any water in, excuse me. So if that happens, you might want to like soak it in a bucket or something deep overnight just to get the soil back soaked up. But if you overwater, it's going to rot the roots. So underwatering, you can kind of manage that. The plant will just soak the water back up and it will probably perk back up. But overwatering, you're going to kill all the roots, and that's really actually killing the plant. Light, I already mentioned with this plant. I don't know if y'all are going to go out and get the same kind of plant, but I would always do your research online when you get a new plant, figure out what the name is, and do some research on it. Probably the reason why we've killed most of these plants in the past is because we thought it looked cool, but we had no idea what to do with it. So there's endless amounts of information online. There's videos of people telling you what to do. Like just do that, and you'll get good at it. You'll figure out what the plant needs. So light, no direct sun, but I would say this one's pretty good. Like it doesn't even really need a whole lot of light. There's a difference between the plant surviving and thriving. So this plant will survive in a room that has no windows. Maybe there's like a fluorescent light or maybe not. But over time, it's going to start to decline. So it survived for a while, but it wasn't thriving. It wasn't looking the way that you wanted it to look. So you got to figure out the optimal conditions if you want it to appear how it did when you bought it. I could keep talking about plants, but I'm sure you can all see how enthusiastic I am about this. And I really do like to talk with my clients as a therapist about, how they can try to incorporate something like this into their life. So lastly, I just kind of wanted to say, so this webinar was done in part with Gainesville Community Counseling Center, where I am a full-time therapist. We have multiple therapists at Gainesville Community Counseling Center who are taking clients. And if you're interested in learning more about scheduling therapy, I will be posting this video online, I think on our Facebook. I'm not sure where else, but it'll be posted, and you can always get the contact information from that post when I put it in the comments. So one last thing before we finish up is that I need to show you my my sources of information. Thank you so much. I'm going to pull up the references page and my contact info here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.